everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon, my name is Riley Lung and you're listening to 1680 The Crow. It's currently 2:30 p.m. and starting with breaking news, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canadian intelligence services are investigating credible information. This brings a potential link between the government of India and the BC Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who was shot and killed in Surrey on June 18th. The Sikh community accused the Indian government of being behind the murder and to silence voices advocating for the Punjab state to become an independent Sikh nation. This afternoon, Trudeau told the House of Commons that after investigation, agents of the government of India were responsible for Nijjar's death. In a world where technology is becoming increasingly intertwined with everyday life, more and more people are choosing to listen to music the old-fashioned way. Lachlan Irvin has more on this record store resurgence.
Young people are flocking to record stores more in the last decade than they have since the heyday of the medium. Mark Richardson is the manager of Audiophile on Commercial Drive, and he's noticed some interesting trends in sales over the last few years.
There's been a real resurging interest in jazz, I found, definitely with younger generation, like even my generation. I'm about 42 years old. When we were coming up and as kids in the 80s and 90s, jazz was definitely like kind of a dead zone. But over the last decade, there's been a pretty strong resurging interest in older jazz, and then a lot of new musicians kind of taking on jazz and forming their own little worlds.
For people just getting into collecting vinyl, Richardson recommends newcomers invest in a good quality record player to get the most out of their listening experience. Lachlan Irvin, 1680 The Crow.
The SFU football program, which has been cancelled not due to budget reasons, now are confirmed to be due to deficit despite earlier claims. In a report from a special advisor hired to look into SFU's football program says the department overseeing varsity sports at SFU has major money issues, with the operational deficit being $1.7 million this year. A pledge drive run by BC Lions owner Amar Doman raised close to $800,000 to help save the SFU football program. Leaders from across the province share their thoughts on the new amendment to the decriminalization pilot that will start taking place as of today. Sebastian Erring-Sibia has more on this story.
Police in BC has now resumed the enforcement of possession law within 15 meters from playgrounds, spray pools, and skate parks. Janice Morrison, mayor of Nelson, says she's happy the government heard the concerns from the communities and hopes for more spaces to be included in future amendments.
We have some concerns around our recreation center because it is a real gathering point for our community and the communities that live around us. Like, we are the center. So we're looking forward to potentially expansion when the government takes another look at this.
Maureen says we need to give mental health and addiction an extra breath of thought when having discussions around open drug use. Sebastian Elancibia, 1680 The Crow.
The E. coli cases in Calgary that involved multiple daycares have gone up slightly with 348 cases. Fortunately, hospitalizations are down. It's been 2 weeks since the E. coli outbreak occurred, affecting many children. The cause for the outbreak was believed to be from a central kitchen serving the sites. Premier Danielle Smith promised parents that had been affected by the outbreak in the original 11 daycares will receive $2,000 cash per child. Canada will be joining a 3-month-old partnership with several key allies to send air defense missiles to Ukraine. The Defense Minister Bill Blair, who's currently in the United Kingdom, has announced that Canada will be sending $33 million in air defense missiles while on a visit to Canadian soldiers helping train recruits at Lyde Military Training Camp. So far, Canada has contributed a total of $8 billion in aid to support Ukraine in the last year. UN officials warned on Monday that a disease outbreak in Libya's northeast, where floods have killed thousands, could create a second disaster. Diarrhea has been spreading among those who drank contaminated water. This comes after the lack of sanitation after the 2 dams collapsed in flooded cities. My name is Riley Leung, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikka-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikka-King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
young junior hockey player is tough, especially for ones that are considered stars. Take a look into the good, the bad, and the ugly of Canada's most loved sport. Our reporter Zach Clark was able to sit down with some of the PGHL's finest.
Chris Fordham's is the living embodiment of my favorite line from Rudyard Kipling. In the poem If, Kipling talks about what it means, what it takes to grow up and become a man. And the line is, quote, "If you meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same." And actually that line is also over the championship court in Wimbledon as the players come out. But what Kipling means is there are times in life where you will win and you will lose. And obviously in hockey that's the same. But the moment itself of victory and defeat is fleeting. The moment, in other words, is an imposter. It should not define you. Instead, how you react actually defines your manhood and your character. Are you magnanimous? Are you gracious? Are you bitter? And so in the case of Fordham's, to bring it back to the Whalers, my enduring image of Chris Fordham's will not actually be him scoring. He certainly did plenty of that. Instead, I shall always remember the Fordham's who lost. But in losing, he displayed his true character. In the Ladner Leisure Centre earlier this month, in March, he was red-eyed from crying after his junior career ended. But he collected himself and stood tall during my interview with him outside of the dressing room. He spoke very movingly about his 4 years with the Whalers.
Thousands of people play junior hockey, and tens of thousands watch it. It's such an important part of Canadian culture, but few understand the grueling, difficult lives of junior hockey players. But with years of experience in hockey, Alistair was able to shed a little light.
Hi, I'm Alistair Burns. I'm the PA announcer and the public relations spokesman for the White Rock Whalers, and actually I'm a BCIT alumnus as well. I graduated in 2010.
Alistair knows that it's not just a fun pastime. It's still a sport where the teams have to compete. The work these players have to put in is strenuous, and it isn't always rewarding.
It's a grind, because each of these young men have to be disciplined. Junior hockey can be very expensive. In the case of Junior B, each player pays thousands of dollars per season to play. But of course, the coach makes the decision of whether you're sitting, whether you're playing, who's a healthy scratch, who's injured, and so on. So one day you're signed to a team, and the next day you can be traded or released. I've seen it many eager players who walk in to chat to the coach, the door closes, and all of a sudden, bam, your life is turned upside down.
But as Chris Fordham's longtime teammate Bryce Margetson will tell you, it's not just the fear of being traded that makes it hard. The game itself is a battle.
And that was my first real wake-up call, because all the 20-year-olds, they would not leave you without hitting you. If you had that puck and you got it out, they're going to finish the check, and it hurts. Especially when you're a 16-year-old kid or a 17-year-old kid, it hurts.
But for Chris Fordham's, the dedication and skill required to survive in the league seemed to be natural. He took home both team or league awards in every single year of his junior career. He quickly rose to being one of the most relied on members of his team, being first in points 3 consecutive years and being named captain in his last. But in that last year, it seemed like all the hard work and dedication had finally paid off.
Svensson leaves it for Sherwin. Sherwin pass across, shot, scores! The captain Fordham's, we've talked about how he needs 4 points tonight to set a new record for the PGHL, and just 8 minutes into the first period, he's got his first.
Yeah, we talked about how this is actually a very doable record for him to break here tonight. This could be a good point night for the White Rock Whalers. Sherwin, great pass, great hockey IQ to be able to think about who would be open in that circumstance. Finds Fordham's wide open. Not much Sharma can do in that scenario. 2-on-1, empty net basically for Captain 40, and well, he's always going to bury that. And yeah, like you said,
I think I've grown a lot. I think I've probably more grown as a person more than a player. Obviously, my points have grown a bunch, but I think that's just getting older and getting more comfortable in the league and everything like that. But the organization has helped me grow as a player just through the systems play and every practices, and the coaches have helped me along with everything that I've asked them to. If I needed reference for something, they've helped me with it, or anything like that. They've helped me a lot as a person and player.
His relentless self-improvement, both on and off the ice, didn't go unnoticed. In 2022, he was named the Whalers' 3rd ever captain.
I don't know what I expected, but I was pretty ecstatic to get the captain. Obviously, my first year, my veteran, Calder Newson, was the captain. And then the year after that, my cousin, Tyler Price, was the captain for the past 2 years, so that was pretty cool to get captain after that from him. I don't know, I expected to just have a good year and just make the playoffs as a captain. That's all I wanted to do. Push the boys forward, just make sure we're doing better each year.
What many don't understand is that this isn't just a side activity. The boys, well, as Fordham's line mates will tell you, they can end up becoming your lifelong friends.
Me, Fordham's and Margetson and Svensson are looking into like post-secondary hockey, maybe UBCO, Trinity Western, UBC, something along those lines. But yeah, for sure, definitely.
Everybody ended up blending in so well and blending together, which I think really honestly helps with every single team in this league. Because if you guys aren't friends off the ice, there's not going to be chemistry that leads onto the ice. And I think that's what we had the best, was our chemistry off the ice, which led to our on-ice success.
And on-ice success they would have. Fordham's won the MVP of the entire league, and his line put up an unbelievable 243 combined points. So Fordham's, along with his line mates, led the team through the highs.
Newsom takes it across. Fordham's pass in front. Oh, a juicy rebound given up on the pad, and they score! Big goal, Cole with the hat trick, with his back against the wall. Cole Svensson does it all, and that will do it. In overtime, the hat trick for Cole Svensson. And the unfortunate final lows.
And applaud the Delta Ice Hawks on a series victory, 4-1. They close it out here in Game 5, 4-2 over the White Rock Whalers.
And just like that, it was all over. The years of training, perseverance, and hard work had come to its bittersweet end. Many junior players continue on after, like Fordham's and his line plan on doing. Many others hang up the skates altogether. But the one thing every player has is their own unique story and a passion for the game. We hope you enjoyed this peek behind the curtain of the good, bad, and ugly of Canada's most loved sport. I've been Zach Clark with my producer Liam Higgs for 16.
Back in September, a group of engineering students here on campus came together with a common goal: restarting the BCIT Racing Club, which competes in off-road vehicle competitions. The problem? It's been over 3 years since the club was active. Jake McGrail has the story.
Yeah, so it was a bit chaotic for the first couple months. In fact, it's still kind of chaotic.
That's Sawyer Laspa, a third-year student and the president of the club, and as he tells it, a somewhat reluctant president.
I would say everyone wanted me to do it, so it wasn't really a I want to be in this position. It's more of a we need somebody to be in this position, and I'm probably the best fit at the moment for it.
Taking charge of the week's meeting sporting a backwards cap and his steel-toed boots, Sawyer announces that they've taken a big step forward in the manufacturing process.
We got the engine, so we're pretty happy about that. Nothing looks like it's damaged. We're gonna have to get oil and gasoline before we can actually start it up.
Sitting off to the side is Chief Engineer Vincent Van Art. He's in charge of designing this year's vehicle, one that's very much still a work in progress. They have the frame and the engine, but the club's members are still working on different parts of the car, from the suspension to the transmission and more.
It's a lot of machining, manufacturing, some more design work, organization, figuring out accommodations, testing. Things are going to break. Hopefully we have enough time to fix them.
The ultimate goal is to take their vehicle to the Baja SAE event in Oregon at the end of May, an international design and racing competition. Of course, they need a working vehicle to compete, and given the tight deadline and the fact that no one in the club has competed at Baja before, there's no guarantee they'll have it ready.
I'd say that's pretty consistently been a 50% shot the whole way through. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and there's a little bit of luck involved, so we'll just see how things work out.
Yeah, Ben's at about 10 degrees already,
Yeah, okay.
so we just need a bit more. Oh, I'm sliding. Okay, like this.
Oh, hey, look at that.
Yeah, it's dead on perfect.
Beauty. Yeah, looks good. Great. So now you guys can make another one, right?
Have to put our engine here, have that on like, well, we have to put that on like a 90-degree bevel block. See if this thing runs.
Even if they can't get their vehicle done in time, Sawyer wants to be at the competition to take it in and learn from it.
I'm like super pumped. It's going to be really good. Sometimes you can get in like a bit of a bubble where you think that you're the best, and it's going to be interesting to see what the other programs have come up with from different schools and kind of see the possibility of what we could be doing in potentially a few years if the club continues to run.
Vincent is more optimistic, but he's not setting the goal at championship or bust.
We would like to get within, hopefully, the top 10. It would build morale. It would also help with funding. It'd also be a lot of fun. And I think the school, BCIT, would be quite proud if a club actually did quite well in one of these competitions.
This new iteration of the club still has its growing pains, but for Vincent, it's fostered a real sense of community amongst its members.
I found the biggest aid in building a good team, working well as a team, is just keeping the communication open, working with everybody, having good conversations. And then also just having friendly conversations, meeting with people, and trying to have a good time while we work.
It's that sense of collaboration that Sawyer thinks will benefit everyone, not just in terms of building their Baja vehicle, but in the rest of their schooling as well.
Connecting with the first and the second years, I think that's been really valuable. The fourth years, at least in the mechanical engineering department, they've been kind of distant, and so I think it's been really nice to get to talk with the first years and the second years and, you know, give them some advice on how they can, you know, succeed in the program, and also just like reminisce on like, oh yeah, when we were in first year and all that stuff was so hard and now it's really easy.
For 1680 The Crow, with my co-producer Jen J.
The modern car industry is ever growing, but the historic car industry refuses to die. Zach Clark has more.
As time marches on, more and more classic cars are destroyed, some for parts, some through accidents, and many through neglect. But there's a small niche of collectors fighting hard to preserve these historic machines. Nick Cormier is one such collector, and as we stepped into his garage, we could tell he was passionate.
I'm very much what you'd call a hobbyist, so my knowledge of cars is very specific to classics, you know, not what your everyday person is driving around. I don't mess around with that computery stuff. I'm not here to make money. The car in question is a 1962 Mercury Monterey, which I found on Craigslist for $1,500, and dragged out of a field with a flatbed and had it brought over to a garage, which I had rented for a couple of years.
It's not just not profitable, it's expensive. So why do people like Nick invest so much money and time into this?
You know, as rough as it was when I picked it up, buying that car is one of the things I regret least doing in my life. When people see me with it, like I'd have my garage door open and people would walk by, I would get so many compliments and comments and people asking me about it, and there's just such interest out there for it. And I couldn't let this piece of history, this rolling piece of art, go to waste, even if it is a terrible financial decision and soaks up a lot of my time.
But it's not just time and money. It takes skill, too, using dangerous power tools and even welding.
In terms of the metalworking component, that was high school. You know, I took metal fabrication in high school, easily my, best class, favorite class. It's nice to get to carry that over into my hobby.
His current car is his longest project, having started on it almost 3 years ago.
So that car had sat before I bought it for approximately 15 years. And I have a feeling that when it was parked, it wasn't in the best shape to begin with. You know, some of these cars are parked for a reason.
A car in need of this many repairs requires someone with knowledge, expertise, and a willing to put up with a little monotony.
Okay, pedal down, pedal up. We've got fluid now. Okay. Pedal down. Pedal up. Pedal down.
He knows his cars might never reach a showroom floor, but according to him, that's never been what it's all about.
It's a bit of a Havana restoration, not the clean edges and the prettiest, but
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
from the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus. This is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Welcome to the 3 o'clock News and Sportscast. I'm Joseph Augusti, and thanks for tuning in. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is urging India to cooperate in an investigation that links the government of India to the killing of Canadian citizen. Trudeau says the intelligence shows agents of the Indian government are believed to be involved in the killing of the British Columbian Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
I know many Canadians, particularly members of the Indo-Canadian community, are feeling angry or perhaps frightened right now. Let us not allow this to change us. Let us remain calm and steadfast in our commitment to our democratic principles and our adherence to the rule of law.
The RCMP Integrated Homicide Investigation Team has been called in to investigate a fatal shooting in Burnaby. We can now confirm that IHIT has identified the victim, 29-year-old Gagandeep Sandhu of Abbotsford. The motive of the shooting remains unclear. Burnaby RCMP were called to North Road and Cameron Street area just after 5 p.m. on Saturday, after reports of gunshots. Officers who arrived on the scene found a body in the barcade. Investigators say they believe the shooting was targeted and that there is no risk to the public. Quest Outreach Society has opened their first permanent location downtown, helping people who need it most access food, and our reporter Zach Clark has more.
Quest Outreach Society has opened the doors of their downtown east side nonprofit grocery store. With prices often less than half of what you'd see at a regular grocery store, it turns waste into food for those who need it most. Jason Blaschuk, Sources Housing and Support Manager, says it will reduce both food waste and theft.
A business that's designed to, take the profit out of groceries, take the waste out of groceries, and by people being able to access this, they don't need to do other activities to access groceries.
Quest has been an enormous success since it was started, feeding tens of thousands of people who need it most. Zach Clark, 1680 The Crow.
Now we hear from Zach himself. Zach, can you hear us?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. What kind of people qualify to use the Quest market?
Well, Quest supports anyone going through financial struggles. This could be anyone from homeless people to students to people going through divorce, or maybe those struggling with medical issues. Anyone who truly needs the help the most.
What services does Quest provide?
Quest provides fresh groceries at the absolute minimum possible cost. But on top of that, they provide people with a place to heat up or cook basic meals, as well as a walk-in freezer to keep produce fresh for longer. They'll also assist anyone who doesn't understand how to use equipment or hasn't learned how to cook themselves.
Thanks a lot, Zach. Have a good day.
Of course. You too.
Leaders from across the province share their thoughts on the new amendment to the decriminalization pilot that will start taking place as of today. Sebastian Arancibia has more on this story.
Police in BC has now resumed the enforcement of possession law within 15 meters from playgrounds, spray pools, and skate parks. Janice Morrison, mayor of Nelson, says she's happy the government heard the concerns from the communities and hopes for more spaces to be included in future amendments.
We have some concerns around our recreation center because it is a real gathering point for our community and the communities that live around us. Like, we are the center. So we're looking forward to potentially expansion when the government takes another look at this.
Maureen says we need to give mental health and addiction an extra breath of thought when having discussions around open drug use. Sebastián Arancibia, 1680 The Crow.
In a world where technology is becoming increasingly intertwined with everyday life, more and more people are choosing to listen to music the old-fashioned way. Lachlan Irvin has more on this record store resurgence.
Young people are flocking to record stores more in the last decade than they have since the heyday of the medium. Mark Richardson is the manager of Audiophile on Commercial Drive, and he's noticed some interesting trends in sales over the last few years.
There's been a real resurging interest in jazz, I found, definitely with younger generation, like even my generation. I'm about 42 years old. When we were coming up and as kids in the 80s and 90s, jazz was definitely like kind of a dead zone. But over the last decade, there's been a pretty strong resurging interest in older jazz, and then a lot of new musicians kind of taking on jazz and forming their own little worlds.
For people just getting into collecting vinyl, Richardson recommends newcomers invest in a good quality record player to get the most out of their listening experience. Lachlan Irvin, 1680 The Crow.
High-level executives from the major Canadian grocery chains are meeting in Ottawa to discuss measures to stabilize grocery prices. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland and Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne are set to meet with executives from Loblaw, Metro, Empire, Walmart, and Costco today. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced last week that the federal government is asking major Canadian grocers to come up with a plan by Thanksgiving to stabilize prices.
It's not okay that our biggest grocery stores are making record profits while Canadians are struggling to put food on the table. So Minister Champagne will be calling on the heads of large grocers to come to Ottawa with a plan to address the rising cost of food. And we expect to hear from them by Thanksgiving on what their plan is to stabilize prices.
Grocery prices have risen 8.5% year over year in July, much worse than the overall inflation rate at 3.3%. A British politician is urging police to look into sexual assault claims against comedian and actor Russell Brand. 4 women told a Channel 4 television documentary and The Times and Sunday Times newspapers that Brand assaulted them. One says she was sexually assaulted during a relationship with him when she was 16. Another woman says Brand raped her in Los Angeles in 2012. Legislator Carolyn Noakes, who chairs the House of Commons Women and Equalities Committee, urged police in both Britain and the United States to investigate this incredibly shocking allegations. Brand has denied all the claims, saying his relationships were always consensual.
We are obviously going to look into this matter because it's very, very serious. In the meantime, I want you to stay close, stay awake, but more important than any of that, if you can, please stay free.
Now on to sports. The inaugural draft of the Professional Women's Hockey League started up on Monday morning. University of Minnesota forward Taylor Heisey was drafted first overall by hometown Minnesota. Tennis legend Billie Jean King announced the pick.
I'm being told the first pick is in. With the first overall pick in the inaugural Professional Women's Hockey League draft, Minnesota selects Taylor Heisey.
The first BC-born player to be picked was North Vancouver's Hannah Miller, who was taken in the 13th round, 74th overall, by Toronto. Jocelyn Larocque, Alina Muller, Ella Shelton, and Savannah Harmon rounded out the top 5, going to Toronto, Boston, New York, and Ottawa, respectively. The Vancouver Canucks wrap up their annual Young Stars tournament in Penticton. They face the Edmonton Oilers in what will be their last chance for players like Aidan McDonough and Atu Ratu to impress before training camp. The Canucks are an even 1-1 heading into their last game, having beaten Calgary 7-1 in the opener before losing to Winnipeg 3-2 in a shootout last night. Training camp opens September 21st and runs through the 25th in Victoria. An independent special advisor has found that Simon Fraser University's varsity football program will have the potential to operate in Canada, but not south of the border. In a 136-page report released Monday, McLaren Global Sports Solutions Senior Vice President Bob Copeland concluded that a competitive football program operating in the United States is not feasible or sustainable. But he noted that SFU football has the potential to build a competitive and sustainable program in Canada through membership in Canada West and U Sports. The Burnaby BC-based school announced a dissolution of its football team last April after its affiliation with the NCAA conference ended. The Canadian men's under-17 team released their squad today for their upcoming friendly against the Brazil under-17 team. A major standout on the Canadian squad list was 16-year-old Tarek Tahid making the team. Tahid, a Maple Ridge native, made history over the summer by becoming the youngest player to sign, debut, and score in the Canadian Premier League. Tahid plays midfield for expansion squad Vancouver FC and has scored 2 goals across 16 league appearances. Columbus Blue Jackets general manager Jarmo Kekalainen spoke to the media about controversial coach Mike Babcock's resignation from Columbus. Kekalainen was apologetic, noting that he shoulders the responsibility for the failed hire.
This morning I had a meeting with the players and I apologized for any inconvenience, awkward situation that this may have put them in. And it was my sincere apology to them. I'm extremely disappointed by what has transpired over the last week. We understood the dynamics of hiring Mike before we did so. and understand the criticism now that it didn't work out the way we had planned.
Babcock resigned Sunday afternoon after it was uncovered that he inappropriately went through Blue Jackets players' phones, making some of them uncomfortable. Paul Bissonnette of the podcast Spit and Chicklets first spoke of the allegations, exposing Babcock's unconventional tactics. The NHL and NHLPA quickly undertook an investigation, and after it was known that players were uncomfortable with Babcock's methods, negotiations for his exit swiftly begun. Many NHL experts claim that Babcock is highly unlikely to ever coach in the NHL again. Major League Soccer has terminated the contract of CF Montreal midfielder Matko Miljevic. An investigation found that he engaged in conduct detrimental to the league and violated his standard player agreement, MLS said Monday in a one-paragraph news release. It was widely reported last week that Miljevic was banned for life from a Quebec amateur indoor soccer league for striking another player in the face. The 22-year-old Argentinian player allegedly used a false name in order to play 3 games in the league, which is a violation of his NHL or MLS contract. Miljevic saw limited action with CF Montreal, recording 1 assist over 184 minutes. Now for the weather report. Burnaby residents can expect a sunny day Monday with a high of 19 degrees. Enjoy the sun while it lasts early in the week, as expected to be raining on Tuesday before another couple of sunny days midweek before the rain hits again over the weekend. That does it for our cast. Thanks for listening. This has been Joseph Augusti for 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikki-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikki-King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
At no point in history has music been more accessible than it is today. iTunes, Spotify, YouTube Music are just a few of the many options people have for listening to their favorite artists. But in the age of Bluetooth speakers and viral TikTok remixes, more and more folks are turning to the more tried and true options for listening to music at home, specifically vinyl records. After falling out of popularity thanks to the advent of the CD in the 80s, vinyl has experienced a major renaissance in the last decade. With the limitations in quality that audio streaming can provide, records are still considered by many to be the best listening experience available. And the stores that sell them are a crucial meeting place for music enthusiasts. Local record stores provide both the product and the expertise that a shuffle button can't. Mark Richardson works at AudioFile and Commercial Drive, having been in the industry for over 2 decades. And he spoke to me about the resurgence in record sales and how crucial local record stores are for music fans. I guess my first question would be, when you think of a record that made an impact on your life, which ones come to mind?
First record to like really kind of move me from listening to whatever was on the radio was hearing Nirvana's In Utero when I was probably about 11 years old. It absolutely changed everything overnight for me. When the album.
How so?
Go ahead. I had just never heard any music that raw and immediate and just that potent. Nothing had like hit me. You know, I was listening to kind of whatever was on the radio at that point. Hadn't really like formed my own little music listening, basically. Like I just kind of whatever was on, and then I came across that album pretty much right when it came out. And just that was it. It was the hunt was on for whatever else could do that to me again.
How old were you at the time?
I was about 11 years old.
Okay, wow. So young for sure.
Yeah.
And that's kind of seems to be part of the trend right now, is records are making a pretty big comeback as far as like, you know, with Spotify and iTunes and everything and all the options people have. Records are becoming quite popular, especially with younger demographics. Like, what trends are you seeing in your store from people currently when it comes to buying records?
You mean genre-wise, or what? Like
anything that you're seeing.
There's been a real resurging interest in jazz. I found definitely with younger generation, like even my generation. I'm about 42 years old, and you know, when we were coming up and as kids in the 80s and 90s, jazz was definitely like kind of a dead zone. I mean, even the 2000s was like kind of a rough spot for contemporary jazz. But over the last decade, there's been a pretty strong resurging interest in older jazz, and then a lot of new musicians kind of taking on jazz and forming their own little worlds with that. That's been a big thing for sure. Go ahead.
What albums are selling? Like, what specific albums are selling right now, and why?
As mentioned, jazz for sure. That's been a big genre for us, and we were interested in it as well. So, you know, we can stock stuff that we like and know and can recommend to people. Audiophile records, so like high-end presses of albums, has like kind of skyrocketed over the last handful of years. We carried them for a long time, but the last couple of years it's really taken off, probably part due to a lot more people investing into better equipment. You know, people's vinyl resurgence has been going on for more than a decade now, but I think it's over like the last handful of years people have like put more time and money into getting a good needle and cartridge and better turntables and nice speakers and amps and all that stuff. So yeah, that's been big for us, and we sell a lot of electronic music here. It's kind of our niche, I guess. So yeah, that's always been doing well for us.
And are current day artists, like, you know, because we're seeing a lot of more of the newer artists and everything are starting to re-embrace vinyl themselves and are putting out a lot of vinyl versions of their albums. Are current day artists driving a lot of business for you guys, or is it more people looking for more classic stuff or throwback stuff?
Definitely a bit of both. We don't really stock a lot of like pop music here. We carry a few things that, you know, would fall into that category. We're a neighborhood shop too, right? People come to us for popular items, Taylor Swift records and stuff like that. She's obviously a new artist, and that helps drive sales. But that's, you know, if we didn't have any Taylor Swift records or Olivia Rodriguez or whatever, we would be just fine. So there's definitely a big resurgence in reissues. A lot of people buying records that were kind of hard to find in the first time around, or are just hopelessly expensive online. You get a reissue for $30 to $40 or more, and don't have to spend a couple $100 online. We definitely try to focus a lot on contemporary music and trying to expose people to newer artists and newer albums. It's been a focus of mine for a long time, discovery of new things. There's always plenty of room for nostalgia, and that's a low-hanging fruit. Got to stock those things for sure, but we like to stock a lot of new artists, try to get people to get things that are beyond what they already are familiar with.
Yeah, you mentioned like the getting people into new artists and making and giving them new options and ideas, and that kind of segues perfectly into what would you say the biggest value and importance is for record stores in the modern age? Like, what are you providing that makes it a different experience from, say, just listening to music online or whatever your Spotify is recommending to you?
Yeah. Hopefully people are buying stuff that they're going to want to listen to several years from now. Trying to get people records that are part of a larger collection that sort of becomes, part of their living room, essentially. Part of their everyday life, part of the background of their existence. Just trying to, the vinyl format is, we sort of view it as like the ultimate edition of a piece of music. Streaming is fine. We stream music here, we stream it at home, I use it. It's got its conveniences for sure, but when I want to, possess something, it's pretty much got to be the record, because it's the, most tactile, most interesting edition of something. It's better than a CD or a cassette, but those have their value too.
Right. And, personally, I'm somebody who's looking into getting into records myself. It's something that I've been always interested in. I just haven't gotten the opportunity to really go in and try and find what I like, essentially. So what advice would you give to somebody who's interested in getting into records? What sort of advice would you be giving them on starting out?
Buy decent equipment to start off. Don't buy the $100 Crosley portable turntable pieces of garbage. They're just awful machines. People will spend $100 on that and then spend $50 on the new record. I just save up your money, buy a decent deck, spend a couple $100 on that. You can buy used amps and used speakers and get yourself a good little setup. Takes a little bit more space in your apartment for sure than a little portable guy, but in the long run, it's worth it, especially if you're going to be spending a lot of money on records. Records are not cheap. So if you're going to spend the money on the records, you might as well spend the money on the equipment if you can. And then I would suggest that people buy a handful of records that they know and love, and then talk to the people at the record store. Hey, I love X, Y, and Z. What else you got that's like this? A lot of people can be a little, I don't want to say scared, but, it can be intimidating walking into a record store sometimes. But most people who work in shops are friendly and want to give you advice. So, if you're looking to branch out and you want to get away from the algorithmic recommendations, which tend to be the same things to everybody, talk to people that's behind the counter. Build up your little collection of things that you know and love, and then start branching out.
Perfect. And then my last question for you is, I'm assuming you've collected quite a lot of records yourself over the last 20 years, and that you have a pretty good collection. Is there a record, like a specific record, that you are still searching for in your collection that you're hoping to get someday?
Yeah. How much time you got? Yeah, I guess there's hundreds of records I'm still hunting after. Like, I couldn't even give you one. It would just be one I'd be giving you. There's so many. I just try to seek out a lot of originals or early pressings of things. Once you really start to get into record buying, you end up kind of chasing more collectible, hard to find editions of records. So the list is long for sure. I'm on Discogs obviously, and I've got a want list that's probably like 500 records or something like that. I add to it all the time. Yeah, there's a lot.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good morning, I'm Riley Lung, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow. It's currently 3:30 p.m. Starting off, FortisBC gas users can expect a drop in their gas bills starting October. FortisBC says in a statement that it will be given approval by BC Utilities Commission to drop its gas rates for customers by more than 90 cents per gigajoule. Starting October 1st, the utility says it will amount to about $7 a month in savings for residential customers, though depending on their consumption. Vice President of Energy Supply Joe Mazza says the decrease will provide customers with some financial relief as the colder months come through. Fortis is working hard to deliver gas at its lowest and reasonable cost. Canada's top grocery executives have now pledged to support the Liberal government. Of efforts to keep prices in check, the heads of Canada's biggest grocery chains attended the summit struck by the Liberals in Ottawa on Monday. The government vows action on affordability issues surrounding Canadians. The government and large grocery companies like Walmart and Costco will be working to make a plan to address food inflation. Speaking of groceries, Quest Outreach Society has opened the first permanent location downtown, helping people who need it most access food. Our reporter Zach Clark has more.
Quest Outreach Society has opened the doors of their downtown east side nonprofit grocery store. With prices often less than half of what you'd see at a regular grocery store, it turns waste into food for those who need it most. Jason Blaschuk, Sources Housing and Support Manager, says it will reduce both food waste and theft.
A business that's designed to, take the profit out of groceries, take the waste out of groceries, and by people being able to access this, they don't need to do other activities to access groceries.
Quest has been an enormous success since it was started, feeding tens of thousands of people who need it most. Zach Clark, 1680 The Crow.
Leaders from across the province share their thoughts on the new amendment to the decriminalization pilot that started taking place today. Sebastian Arancibia has more on this story.
Police in BC has now resumed the enforcement of possession law at playgrounds, spray pools, and skate parks. Eleanor Sturko, South Surrey MLA, says since the decriminalization pilot started, people have felt abandoned by the provincial government.
Certainly last week there was some changes announced that take effect today about the places now that are being regulated against the use of drugs in public. But here at UBCM, I'm here as an observer, and I'm seeing overwhelmingly that communities, municipal leaders, and city councils are feeling abandoned.
Sturko says decriminalization won't stop people from overdosing. She says people need medical service to stabilize and overcome the addiction they're dealing with. Sebastián Arancibia, 1680 The Crow.
A wildfire burning near Peachland, BC have now been quadrupled in size on Sunday, now prompting an evacuation order for 15 properties. The Glen Lake fire, just 15 kilometers west of Peachland, has grown to 4.5 square kilometers since it's first discovered on Saturday. This fire is believed to be human-caused, and despite the mayor's assurances, the BC Wildfire Services says the blaze is not responding to suppression efforts and does pose a threat to public safety. Ontario's Superior Court has dismissed a charter challenge launched by an alliance of sex workers, ruling that Canada's criminal laws surrounding sex work is constitutional. Jen Claman, a coordinator of the Canadian Alliance for Sex Work Law Reform, says sex workers across Canada are devastated by the ruling, calling it insulting and ignorant.
One of the things that the court says is that sex workers don't understand the laws and don't know the impacts of the laws, and not only is that just dismissive, but it's extremely patronizing to suggest that people who live the application, the harms and the consequences of the application of those laws every day don't understand them.
On to the weather. It's currently 16 degrees in Vancouver and 18 degrees in Burnaby. You may find it's a little bit windy at the moment. Better coat up tomorrow because there's a 100% chance of rain in the forecast. This is Riley Lung, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.